I'm welcoming you to my third episode of BarTalk, and today my guest is...
I am Camille. Camille Kisses 2010 on Instagram.
And she's worth a good follow.
I know, right?
And before we get started, what are you drinking since we're in a bar?
It's a tangerine wheat. I only go wheats when stouts aren't really readily available, but this tangerine wheat's pretty good, pretty fruity. I really like it.
You know, and we do have a stout in the back. We have the coconut Merlin, but we're waiting for a space to open up for it. So sorry. We'll have it on for tonight. I'm having 7-Star Stormtrooper. Wanted something a little different today, so this is Bullet Bourbon, kind of a twist on an old fashioned with Luxardo cherry liqueur, orange bitters, and a little splash of soda water. Just a little something to sip on.
Oh yeah, that was good. I think I had that on my birthday.
I think you have a little bit of everything. So tell me about yourself. What are your labels or your descriptors?
I first and foremost identify as being black. Identify as being a woman, of course. Bisexual, or I mean, hell, I'll try some of everything. Try anything for once. Very much bisexual, but I've chosen to be with my partner Andrew, to marry him. And as far as other labels, you know, I kind of struggle with that sometimes because I've always struggled with identity over the years. Either, you know, I consider myself black, but, you know, the music that I listen to or something doesn't necessarily fit into what black culture is. So it's been like the last 5 years, like really embracing that and, you know, just forcing myself back into a culture that I really do still identify with. So predominantly black, bisexual, woman, and batshit crazy.
In all the best ways. My favorite Alice in Wonderland quote: "You're mad, you're bonkers. But let me tell you a secret: all the best people are."
It's true. It's true. All of them are.
Did you want to talk all about your career or what you do, or?
Oh, sure. I am by trade a social worker. So I oversee a department that helps the homeless out in Contra Costa County. I have a team of case managers who are all absolutely great and wonderful. They go out into the streets every day working with homeless families. My largest family being like 8 people. And 6 of them being children under the age of 9. But in addition to running a homelessness program, I also am a professor of sociology, and I do that contractually when I have the time. And then I also am a consultant, and I help other nonprofits build the capacity to do the work that they want to do.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Just a little something.
Might add on other things later. You never know.
Absolutely. I've been thinking about all day what label I was going to talk from myself today, and I still don't know what I feel like. I don't know which label I want to talk about. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to come back to that one.
Okay.
So thinking of any of those labels, or any, you can bounce around or stick to one. But what's a stereotype that would belong to one of those labels that you love, that you appreciate that is a stereotype?
I think. So there's a lot in there that I think about. There's one that I have a love-hate relationship with. There are, you know, some people who think and have this conception that being bisexual is like you don't know what you want. You can't choose. And, you know, in some respects, it's like I don't know the human that I want to be with until I met my fiance. But as far as, you know, just wanting to go out and live my life and be me, you know, it made me happy because people didn't really know what I was going to choose that night. You know, like I would hang out with my friends and have my wing guys or my wing woman, and they'd be like, oh, look at that guy over there, and then look at that girl over there. Who's she going to pick? You know, kind of thing. And it always shocks them when...
Was there like a pool, money?
It always shocked them when I would choose the person and the one that was most interesting to me, and then, you know, they could never really put a finger on what my type is because I don't really have a type. And most time, you know, a lot of people do have a type, and, you know, a lot of people that I know who identify as being bisexual, they have a very real preference in the type of women that they like, a very real preference in the type of men that they like, and I don't have just, you know, one specific one. That's why, you know, sometimes I'll say I'll try anything because they come in all different shapes, sizes, race, ethnicities. You know, I've dated somebody who is now identifies as trans male, you know, so that one, and that, they think that I can't choose, or that I don't know what I want, but I know what I want. And it's just fun seeing people's reactions with whatever it is that I come up with.
Why do you think it is that you don't have it? Like, what about that? Because you're right. Some people definitely have a type, and sometimes it crosses over into even it can be racial things. Mm-hmm. And is that okay to have a type or not have a type? But what about what do you think makes you so different in that not having a type thing?
I think it's because growing up. And I went to elementary school, predominantly black school. I think there were maybe 3 people that weren't black in my elementary school. Had a very, very real culture shock in high school because it went from being predominantly black to predominantly white. But relatively kind of diverse. We had Asian and Latino and, black folks in there. It was my first time in that sort of environment. So when I was in elementary school and among people who looked like me all the time, I was antagonized and just bullied a lot because I had very different perspectives. I didn't really care about, the clothes people wore, what family they came from, anything like that. People were just people to me. I don't know how I came to start to believe that, and then when it got to the time of dating, it really was still just people are just people. The very first person I dated he was black. And then after that, it was just a series of different races and ethnicities. And my family hated it for a long time. They were like, oh, it's just a phase, she'll get over it. And I'm like, I really, truly don't care about, what they look like or where they come from. I care about their history, their culture, as they see it and as it relates to who they are as a person. But I'm really looking for somebody who respects me, respects the things that I like, respects the fact that, one minute I might be playing trap music and the next minute, I'm listening to power metal. And it's blaring, and they have to be okay with that.
But
that's
no country, right?
No, I love country music. What?
It's the only one I hate.
I love country music. I love country music. So
it's just so sad. It always makes me miss a dog I don't have.
Well, just listen to Toby
crying
Keith.
A beer I'm not drinking.
Listen to Toby Keith's Bad Country. He'll make you want to drink. But I've always just kind of been that independent person that just marches to the beat of my own drums, and my relationships have always been that way. I'm just going with the person that interests me in the moment, and figuring out if it's more. Are you getting to know someone before an attraction starts? Is it more about who they are than how they look? Oh, definitely. Like my attractions to people can switch, depending upon what comes out of your mouth next. You could be like the best looking person in the room and everybody else acknowledges that, but you could be somebody that I really just don't find attractive at all because of maybe a viewpoint that you might have that I don't share. And over time, I can grow to become way more attracted to somebody just from the conversations we have, or thought processes and beliefs and things like that, and how we treat the people that are around them. And that will grow my attraction to that individual far more than physical looks would. And I'm not saying looks isn't a factor. Right. It's like 10-15% of a factor. Like, if I can live with you, great, and look at you, fabulous. But the rest of that really will dictate how much I actually put into that relationship.
So bisexuals being confused, that stereotype that you hate. Yeah. And you don't fit it. I don't feel confused. Yeah, no, I don't. I know exactly what I want, but I do use it just to confuse other people. So you appreciate that. Yeah. So always throws them off. Mm-hmm. A stereotype that you hate. That I don't know. There's the stereotype that black women are aggressive. Like, if we, that we just naturally aggressive for whatever reason, or we just don't like anybody or something like that. Whenever I sit quietly, or I'm by myself and, I might not immediately say hello to somebody that walks into the room, it's always taken as just aggression. Or if my opinion's different from somebody else's and I speak up about my opinion and why I think that they need to change their frame of thought, it's seen as aggression. When I feel like black women have been marginalized for so long, and we're taught to always respect a man, whether it's a white man or a black man, and we're taught to know our place and things like that. And I'm like, I'm tired of doing that. I'm a human being too. I have my own thoughts, I have my beliefs, I'm intelligent. So I speak my mind and I let it be known when I think that something's wrong, and there's a lot of people that don't like that. But I feel like it gets associated to black women a lot. Of being aggressive.
Yeah, at being aggressive when it's really just us being confident and standing up for ourselves, because it's about damn time we did, you know.
All of us.
Yeah, everybody,
all
women.
But I mean, that is definitely something we've had conversations with employees about, of like, you know, if someone doesn't look like you for whatever reason, like not just black women, but in general, to really stop and take a moment before you assume they're being complaining or difficult or, you know, whatever. Like, just take a step back and make sure that you're not having biases that are coming in here and playing into what's the situation that's happening. Like, we've actually had to have those conversations, because a couple things came up. It was like, that's not what was going on. Yeah. That wasn't someone being angry or upset, or, you know.
Definitely.
So I can imagine. What's a stereotype that you fit?
I like watermelon. It's the only one that I can really think of that I feel like I fit. You know, it's a terrible stereotype, obviously, but I am one of those, you know. I heard it growing up all, like, in high school a lot from people who were, like, really racist. The stereotype was black folks like Kool-Aid, chicken, and watermelon. I'm like, I love all those things because they're delicious. So the only thing that I can really think of.
It's such a weird one, too. Like, I just don't know.
I don't know.
The watermelon in particular just seems like such
I don't know where it came from.
Yeah, it's such a weird one.
I feel like I should know that, but I don't know where it came from.
It's probably...
And, like,
we probably don't want to know. It's probably not pretty.
Yeah. I'm like, there's a watermelon currently sitting in my car right now. I shit you not. There's really one sitting in my car right now, and I'm ready to eat it. Okay.
I love it. I'm still trying to think of something I feel like talking about today from myself, and I don't know. I guess I'm a mother. That's one of my labels. And a stereotype that I hate is I feel, and I was a young mom when I first became, not anymore, now I'm old, but when I first became a mom, and I felt like there was a lot of judgment about that, about being a young mom and what that meant, and it guided some of my choices. Like, when I got divorced, I didn't change my name back because I didn't want my name not to match my son's. Because I was such a young mom, people thought that I wasn't married, or that I must be on assistance or living with relatives, and there was all these, like, stereotypes from the doctors and everything when it was all happening. And I look back and say, well, who cares if I was a single mom? Like, why would I want that to, you know? But when I was young and my son was starting kindergarten, I didn't want to fit that label, which was really weird. And a stereotype that I think that I love is that that I know how to take care of shit. And I do. Usually can figure something out, and I'm watching to see who doesn't look so, like when we're here working at the bar, like, who doesn't look good? Oh, I think they're gonna need a bag. You know, it's time to call it. And I guess one that I hate is just the I feel like for a long time, like the judgment I was talking about, I feel like I wasn't allowed to still have fun and do things, which obviously I don't feel like that anymore. But I feel like I have this pressure of, like, is this how a parent's supposed to act? Or,
I have a lot of friends who have that same belief, you know, and they feel that same kind of pressure that, you know, they're relatively young, you know, less than 30, you know, years old, and it's either, automatically assume that they're a single parent, and even if they are, so what?
Right. Why is that even a bad thing? But it's business? Still, you know.
And then it's just an assumption that your entire life goes away because now you have a child. And I mean, I'm not a parent or anything, but I've watched people struggle with that concept of they want to maintain a social life, and yes, they have their responsibility to their kids, but then, you know, they're treated like crap because they hire a babysitter for a night. Or, you know, maybe they choose to have a date night every Friday so they can at least try to maybe find a partner and, you know, to remain active and keep their friendships and their social circle and network that they're ultimately going to be depending on should something ever happen. You know, it's mind-blowing to me that people pressure single parents so much in that way, you know. It's like they rely on social networks just as much as those without kids, you know, rely on social networks. Right. We go out and we party for a reason.
Well, you can't take care of other people if you can't take care of yourself.
Exactly.
So that's why I always feel like you just need to, you know, you need to do those things for yourself that, and to stay a complete person. In my first marriage, I didn't. It was abusive, and I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do a lot. Mm-hmm. And my son was like the center of my world, but it wasn't healthy for either one of us. Yeah. Like, that should not be a child's role, to be your buddy,
right?
To be your best friend, to be the one that you're with, like, you know. every single day, all day like that. So, so that was definitely took some time to learn and like figure that out. Are there any biases that you realized you had at some point in the past or that you currently have?
Um, you know, over the years, I started undergrad in 2010. So, ooh, started undergrad in 2010. All right, and
I know I'm doing the math. Wait a minute.
And I immediately started off in the human services field. So that's what I started studying, was social work right off the social work and nursing right off the bat.
Nursing too, huh?
Yeah. So, when you're working with people, the things that they teach you are understanding your bias. And a lot of my biases came, just with the culture of people that I just left in high school. Like, we had interactions with people who were very wealthy and very entitled, and then there were some who were really chill and down to earth, and then there was us from the South Side that sometimes we didn't know how to act, and that's okay too. But when I went into college, I went into another world where I'm here with a bunch of people, a lot of them feeling really, really entitled because of the way they were raised or their parents being wealthy. So I automatically tacked that entitlement to all white people. And as I was encountering other people who didn't grow up that way, it took a lot of just mind shifts to really just kind of walk away from that and to take people for who they are at face value, until they show me something otherwise. But that was just really ingrained in me for a while, having not been around white people ever, to then being in a predominantly white school and then making a decision to go to a predominantly white college and just encountering that type of person time and time and time again, which were really, really small environments. But then once I started opening my world and traveling and finally getting out of Chicago and Illinois in general, my perspective started to change. So now I'm really conscious of making sure I don't have biases. And if something comes up, or I encounter somebody, I encounter, people with criminal backgrounds all the time, and, there's a chance that I know that I'm going to be working with somebody who's, a pedophile or a rapist, and they have that in their background. I have to kind of check that for a second, because I have a job to do ultimately, and figure out why it is that I'm reacting in the way that I'm reacting. So it's really important in the job that I do, and it's something that I have to continue to work with my team to do, because we encounter a lot of foolishness every day. So it's something that I just got to make sure I'm on top of anyway. And I feel like I do a really good job at keeping that stuff at bay and keeping it in check.
Where is the line, do you think? Like you mentioned your line of work and working with criminals or people who have a criminal background, criminal history. Where is the line between a bias and self-preservation? Like making smart choices because you're with someone that has done something in the past that wasn't safe.
So I always preach physical safety. Of course, make sure you're safe no matter what. And that's just with any person. That's a blanketed statement, whether we know they have a criminal background or not. But if it's something really, really recent, I really, and it's let's say it is somebody was charged with rape, I really protect the women on my team. I have done that in the past where I'm buddy system it up. Don't go anywhere alone. I will pair, I'll do whatever makes them feel comfortable. And if they're uncomfortable with doing something, especially like that, and we know that something 1 in 3 women have been sexually assaulted in their lifetime, I'm not going to put them in that situation. And if it's something that I got to go to bat with my supervisors about, I will. I'm relatively comfortable in stepping into those situations with safety precautions put in place. And that's just with anybody in general, I'm not going to go somewhere, that I don't feel safe.
Well, you don't always have the benefit of that information.
Yeah, sometimes you don't always.
You don't get to see someone's background or file.
Sometimes you don't always have that, and then, just taking, normal safety precautions. If you know you're going on a home visit or something, and you've never met this person, don't go on a pair of heels. It might make running away a little bit more difficult. Right. Throw on some flats or some tennis shoes or something. Just doing small things that could really make a difference between, you being okay and you're not, to the best of your ability, of course. But.
Well, another thing, I was going to go back to something else you mentioned. You mentioned being bullied in elementary school for not fitting, and you also said in the very beginning that you didn't feel like you always fit in with the societal expectation of Black culture, or and that's been a recurring theme that I've heard from other guests before. So I just want to talk a little more about what does that mean? And like one guest specifically used the term Oreo, that's what was thrown at them because they didn't sound black and they didn't like black music and they didn't act black enough, like they were doing well in school and stuff. So we just talked about like where does those ideas come from, and where do you think those ideas start with? And
I feel like a lot of our parents and grandparents and things like that were raised to be very close-knit with each other because they didn't really have a choice. Who's going to look out for you better than somebody who else is black? Especially when
segregation.
And you're kept in neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of that is self-preservation. And, I still believe that I need black people around me and in my life for self-preservation because we all share an experience of dealing with racism or prejudice, and things like that just because of the way we look. And having somebody around you who understands that and who can empathize with you and kind of help you work through it, especially if they've worked through it, is always great. But over the years, as integration has happened and we now have communication across the world that we didn't have decades ago and things like that, and the ability to learn and to surmount a vast knowledge base, it didn't fit or suit me anymore to continue to have beliefs that every white person I encountered was trying to do something against me, trying to hurt me in a negative light or something like that. It never started to fit, it never fit my mind view and my perspective in the first place. So, we played video games. We liked video games, and I would come across music playing like Tony Hawk or Madden or NFL and be like, I kind of like this, like first rock song I think I got into was Ozzy, and that was Crazy Train coming from one of them doggone games. And from him, I just kept on spanning out and, discovered Metallica and somehow roped around a Bon Jovi and things like that. And that knowledge base of music just continued to grow. And then as that grew, I apparently became less and less and less black because of it. And I like the old school rap, but as far as anything nowadays, I can't name one rapper that I probably do like.
Well, probably because they mumble rap their name.
Lord Jesus, it's not the culture that I fit into anymore necessarily. I identify as being black, but there's so much more to being black than just trap, rap, and hip hop, and wearing braids and doing whatever else it is that people stereotype us to do all the time. And it's just really interesting to me that because of my music choice, I get called an Oreo. When we look at Michael Jackson, who is black, I don't care how he died, he is black.
Well, he was. He's no longer with us.
He was black.
I wasn't saying that. Yeah, I got you.
And he's the king of pop, and you got the king of rock and roll, Elvis, who stole the vast majority of his music from black artists. Ike and Tina Turner, for better, they played rock music. It's a genre we've always been in, but not one that we're recognized for as much as we should be. And our influence over all forms of music should be acknowledged by us and, by our people, but it's not. And as we start to acknowledge the fact that there are black people who play country and have always played country music, jazz, blues, rock, pop, and all that other stuff, I choose to acknowledge all the realms we've ever touched. I always say I'm here for everything black, and I root for everybody black, and it don't matter what the spectrum is, no matter what the sport is. If it makes me less black to see a hockey game, so be it, child. But I don't know. I think it's just, people are still trying to be self-preservating, and that's great and all. But it's more of a hindrance, in my opinion, because it stops you from seeing so much more that people have to offer,
Well, one thing that someone else specifically mentioned was because he did well at school, and so then that's what we were kind of saying. Well, where is this really coming from? Because those kinds of thoughts really hold down, really make stop people from reaching their full potential, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of a thing. That if white people are having these stereotypes and then black people are treating each other in this way, that if they don't fit those stereotypes, they're not really black, it's a big mess.
Yeah.
And so I asked him, I wondered, do you think maybe it goes back somehow? It's not really starting within black communities, but starting like with white supremacy kind of a thing, where it's kind of planted that this is what it means to be black, and if you're being successful and being productive, that does, somehow, how does that become not black? Like, why is that not fitting? But that's what you were facing, right, when you were younger.
And even that blew me, because I was bullied for being intelligent. Like, it's ridiculous. It was ridiculous in the moment, and it's just as ridiculous now. And I think I heard this from my grandma, like, saying that whatever you don't want a black person to know, put it in a book. Because whatever you don't want a black person to know, put it in the books. Because during times of slavery, we were not taught to read. We were not allowed to. You were beaten if you were done so, if they caught you doing it. So, some people feel that ignorance is bliss, and that's mind-blowing. I don't understand why. And then there's a group of people who choose not to read, what's in books and stuff, because who really controls what's actually written there? Like, there are still textbooks out there that say Christopher Columbus discovered America. I don't know how you discover something that was already inhabited and found, but we're there. And history books aren't necessarily written from other perspectives than probably some old white guy that's up there on a little printing press and producing whatever it is they say or have deemed to be true and to be history. So why do we want to learn a history that we know not to be facts? Because if we look at history books, we don't exist prior to slavery, which is insane. Right. We have centuries and millennia worth of history on the continent of Africa prior to slavery, where we were kings and queens, and we practiced our own, religions, and we really held our own as far as creating civilizations and things like that. But look at a history book, it's not going to tell you that. So there are a group of people that say, if you want to learn what it means to be black, or what it means to be African, or you want to learn your history and your roots, you cannot learn it from any book produced here, by anybody other than someone who is black or who was black. So a lot of that knowledge is kind of like just passed down from person to person and things like that.
Well, people choosing not to. I mean, that happens across all cultures. Like, there are people who are not very smart or don't care to be educated. And it does not fit any one subsection specifically.
But that particular one, sometimes at some point I identified with, like, why am I reading this when I know it's a lie? Like, why would I read this foolishness other than to pass a class?
When did you know? How did you figure it? Like, at what point did you start to become aware of what that meant?
Okay.
Or how? If you didn't have the books, like, how did you figure that out?
So we had older textbooks in elementary school. Like, I went to an elementary school predominantly black on the south side of the city, rougher area, Chicago, things like that. Right? Yeah, in Chicago. And it wasn't as affluent as other schools. So our textbooks and stuff were outdated, and we were catching up to curriculums that other schools had already had. Actually, by the time I got to high school, I figured out I was like years behind in reading and years behind in math. And I can't recall actually having a science course in elementary school. So, I really started questioning things that I was reading in the church. And that's the first time I actually figured out and learned to question things that I was reading. Otherwise, I was raised to just believe whatever. And I posed the question to our priest, who is since deceased, but I posed a question to him about the repopulating of the world, like what happened after the Great Flood and how did certain things happen. And his response to me was, it's in the book. And I'm like, but it don't make sense. They didn't, it hasn't been explained. And he just really dismissed me and just walked off. And I was like, okay, clearly he's hiding something, so I can't believe what's being told to me here. And then that kind of mindset just kind of festered and went on through school and stuff. I would start to ask questions like, okay, so this said he discovered America and blah, blah, blah. How do you discover something that was already there? Okay, and then, I would ask questions and people just could never give me a proper or logical answer. So that's why I started to just not, to to not really fully believe what was being told to me unless I did my own research to the best of my ability. And I mean, I still do it now.
Now it's better, but back then you would hit the same limitations with books then, the books that were
Yep, and then
written,
the books that are written, and then, it's the books that they gave us that I had access to, in school. So then I started going to libraries, and then, the libraries on the south side of the city of Chicago aren't as good as the ones in downtown Chicago. So when I finally figured out how to start taking the buses and stuff by myself, I would go on up to the library there, or I would ask my mom to go to Borders. Somebody please bring Borders back.
I remember Borders.
To go to Borders, and she would buy me books for every holiday. That's all I wanted was books for every holiday. And then I just started to just become more and more educated with books that were out there and, more readily available to the public and not just passed down and years old before we get our hands on them because we're inner city Black students.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, do you credit something with how you were raised or with someone you're interacting with for that, or do you think it was like a quest for knowledge that you're just kind of born with, something that just was a little different in you in that way, that you had that
I think
desire?
my aunt was really hard on me academically. Like if I brought home a B, it wasn't good enough. So, and I used to hate it when I was younger. I always thought that she hated me. And that I was never good enough, but it did fuel a drive to continue to gain knowledge. And when I was younger, it was a drive to continue to gain knowledge, not from my own self-preservation and perseverance, but to be better than her. So it was like a competition. Yes. So it was a competition in my head. And then as I got older, it's like, no, this is really for me, and then I can take that knowledge and hopefully change the views of my family because, they didn't like the fact that I was dating interracially. Okay, why? I am far more eclectic on my food choices and drink choices and music than they are, and it's just like, that's okay. So as I started to like more and do more, they started opening up a little bit more too. Like my mom was just out here February for her birthday, and she had never really drank wine, never really had the desire to do so. And I'm like, this is wine country up here. I live like an hour away from Napa now. We're going to Napa for your birthday, and you will try these things, and you will open up your world perspective and get your life in order, okay? And she did, and she had a ball. And she's like, okay, I want this one, and I want that one, and I'm like, who paying for that?
So she liked the expensive stuff?
Yes. Trifling, So she goes home with 6 bottles of wine, and she would have never otherwise have, chosen, seen, found, ever decided to try or even talk about, So it's like you would have never had that experience had I not had the desire to just branch out from, the hood and from the south side of Chicago. And,
is that where she still lives?
Yeah. And just be in the world, And so.
So we were going to talk about, we're from different generations. So I'm in my 40s and you're in your 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And I was born and raised here in the Bay Area, and you're born and raised in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And so Me Too has been a big thing for the last few years. And that really made me think about how I was raised longer ago than when you were raised. And wondering how different, like I was definitely raised with the idea of that sex was something that just boys wanted, and we were always supposed to say no, and if they would have to earn it, and if they were, they would have to keep trying and work harder to get it. So very different. Now today it's like you say no, that means no, back off. Mm-hmm. And that's what really made me think about it. I was like, God, that's not, at all what I was taught. And I remember also being told, boys give love to get sex, girls give sex to get love. So it was this game of, I only want the love. And so it was definitely the idea too that sex was not desirable for me. Like it wasn't something I was going to enjoy. It wasn't something to look forward to. Something just the boys want. And as I became a bartender, I definitely saw that play out in the bar often. Not so much now because I've been doing this for a long time. But like 15 years ago, of women coming in and getting a couple of drinks with a couple of condoms in their purse, so they could get drunk and go home with someone. But it would be okay if they got drunk first. And they weren't really drunk. It was like they were giving themselves that permission. So I just felt like we were so raised with this rape culture. And if you I'm sure you've heard the song, what is the Cold Outside, and all the debate about that, whether it's wrong or not. And one thing that was in one of the debates about it was that if you can't say yes, you can't say no. So if there's such a game around being able to just straight up say yes, then you also aren't being able to say no. And so it was definitely put into my head that way. And also, like, I mean, we still do this a little bit, but like, don't walk alone, don't do this, don't do that, which very much makes it seem as if something happens, it's your fault. You must not have done one of the things you were supposed to do to keep yourself safe. And no focus on that, men just shouldn't rape. So I'm wondering if you being raised 20 years after me and in a different place, if you were raised with those same ideas or not, or how was that compared to how you were?
Well, the first time I think sex was ever brought up, my mom put the fear of God into me. Like, we would have school dances, and I would be dancing with a boy and thought I got pregnant because I was dancing with a boy. Like, my mom put the fear of God into me. When it came to that. And, she used to dress me like a boy, and I was a tomboy and things like that. So it never was a thing until maybe 13 or 14. And she got tired of me dressing like a boy and put that first girl shirt on me and figured out that I had as big a breasts as I had. And then it became a thing because people started to notice.
So it became a thing for your mom?
Yeah.
Like, that she saw you looking so grown up?
Yeah, so, she would go outside and notice that I'm getting these looks from, men and boys, and now it's being hammered into me. You can't touch anybody or don't have sex, and all men want you for is sex, and you can't do it, and things like that. And so, that's all I really heard. I didn't, and she just would say, wait until you like somebody enough to do it.
She did say that?
Yeah,
okay.
So she did say, wait until you find the right person and until you're old enough. So those were the 2 messages, or the 3 messages that I got. When I was 15, I was raped. And, the conversations kind of changed, and I remember the very first thing my mother told me or asked of me was, did you want it? And that rocked my world, because it was just kind of this flood of emotions of, why would I ever want something to happen like this? And then, of course, this was my fault. And then I go back and I circle around, well, did I actually want this? And that was something that I was battling with from 15 to maybe 18 when I went off to college. And I would see a counselor during classes and after school and stuff like that. And it just wasn't really working, because I didn't want to talk to, I don't like people. I don't want to talk to a counselor,
You're so outgoing. You don't like people?
Yeah, no, at that time.
Okay.
And black folks were, told, the therapies, oh, it's a joke and things like that. So if it's a joke, why am I here? And I really struggled with that concept of, why would my mother ask me, did I want it? So our relationship was, hindered at that point. And then I had to go through court trials and all that other stuff. And in court, being 15, I decided to take the 16 at the time, I think, when the court case actually started. I, looking back now, was brave enough to actually take the stand and testify against that person. And the very first thing out of the prosecutor's mouth was, I asked for it, and that I seduced this 40-something plus year old man, and da-da-da. So then here I am again with this whole cycle and spiral of, what did I do to warrant that, and what did I do wrong, and what should I have done differently, and did I actually want it? Okay, this is definitely my fault. So it wasn't until college where the conversation of nobody ever wants it, and the conversation of men need to be held accountable for their actions and what they do actually became a thing. And I started really working intensely with social workers at the school I went to, and that's actually how I even decided to go into social work.
So that was a driving factor in how you chose.
It really started to reframe my thought. And it's, I have control over my body. I get to give it to whoever I want, and that's okay. If I want to have sex now, that's okay. If I want to say no if I'm about to start, that's okay. And that didn't really take place until after high school and after that incident, and when I'm on my own out in college. So now it's something that I definitely really hold firm and true. Like my sexuality is my own. I boast it. I embrace it. I don't hide it. Don't hide it from my mama. Don't hide it from none of them. They be like, child, help me.
Hide it a little, maybe. They're asking you to hide it just a little.
I mean, y'all know.
No
y'all
more
see
pictures.
me out here in
No,
these streets. So with the statement that it's okay, women are just as sexual beings as men, and I feel like if not more, especially because we have all these hormones and stuff that just go all out of whack during certain times of the month, and it's okay for us to do that. So I didn't really start embracing that frame of thought and really holding men accountable for their actions, and to stop saying, okay, if I'm going out to the bar, Camille, make sure you wear flats so you can run. Make sure that I hold my keys, one in between the fingers. Right, and make sure I don't get too drunk that I can't go home, or that I can't be walking around, or, make sure I don't walk with headphones on, or something like that. Some of it is safety, like, yes, you want to be aware of your surroundings, but women have been raped in pajamas, sweatpants, short skirts, hooded sweaters. Like, we've been raped and beaten in all forms of fashion and style, and in all conditions, asleep, awake, out partying, at work, doing whatever it is that we're doing. Changing my appearance and making myself less desirable is not going to change the fact that somebody has the will to do some harm to me. So change that person first. I'm keep living my life and doing what I want to do.
Right.
But like I said, that didn't develop until after college.
So
after high school.
I took a sociology class one class, and it was probably about 20 years ago now. But one of the few things that I clearly remember from that class, and it was so long ago, that's why I don't know if it's something they would have still covered when you were. But it was in, like, I want to say Norway or somewhere. It was a European country, and they completely legalized prostitution and pornography. Everything was a go, and they had hoped to reduce the rates, is what they hoped, that the violent rape crimes would go down, and they didn't change at all. But child assaults did, and they were. So what the point of the thing was, that what they were trying to say was that rape wasn't about sex; it was about power.
Exactly.
So but a lot of times when children are assaulted, it's more, not always, but sometimes it's because they are victims of opportunity. They're easier to control, they're easier to manipulate, they're easier to keep quiet. And so when these men had regular outlets to go hire a prostitute or look at pornography and get their needs met, not as many children were assaulted. So it was really eye-opening in what does that mean. So if rape's not about sex, then why does it matter what I'm wearing?
Exactly.
Then it's not about that. There's something else there that's at play.
Exactly, because somebody can try to overpower me no matter what I'm doing and no matter what I'm wearing, And it's mind-blowing to me how people can't understand the way that these thought processes of cover girls up and cover women up really feed into that rape culture. It's like, what are you saying to these boys? That if she has her cleavage showing, it's okay to hound her? No, that's not okay. If she's saying go buzz off somewhere. There is that lady that's probably outside standing on the corner waiting to take your $20, that's ready to give you whatever attention you want. So it's insane that we still live in a world where people just don't get that concept. But I've seen a woman, I had a friend actually in college who we were going back and forth about this, and even in college, when I was in college between 2010 and 2015, and women were being drugged, and they found a freshman girl outside of a frat house passed out in the middle of the street, and she had been drugged. So we, like, there was this one girl who really just stood. She was like, you know what, I'm tired of this. And she went out and she started going to the frat houses and drugging the boys. And then she would start just groping them and, like, grabbing them and smacking their ass and just, like, grabbing them and just saying, come here, you're going home with me. And the guy's like, whoa, that's not cool. And she was like, well, if you're saying it's not cool, then why are you doing it to women? And a lot of men wouldn't like if we went out and we just treated them any old kind of way. They don't like when we back talk. What makes you think we like it?
Right. So did it work?
They should, no. No. The school I went to, these people was wild. They was wilding out. They were still doing whatever they wanted to do, and to protect people really is it's a change of mindset. It's a change of belief. Believe the woman. Don't assume innocent until proven guilty in that case, because you need to get her to a position of safety so that she feels safe enough to come out and say what she needs to say and to heal in a way that's best for her. We just really need to start changing people's landscape and viewpoint and start teaching kids, to respect all people and not, just men or whatever.
Right.
Like, respect all people and all of their wishes. If they don't want to, if they don't, and that goes with like families too. I can't tell you how many times in my short 10-year career, 9-10-year career, that I've heard about sexual assaults of children, and the child has not yet to come forward, but the parents aren't recognizing the signs, and they force their child to hug the person who's doing this, and it's another family member, or it's a very close friend. If that kid is uncomfortable around somebody, it's okay for them to be uncomfortable. Don't force them into that position, into that belief, just...
What's part of the rape cult, right? Then you're getting taught that it's not okay to say no, and
right.
You're opening the door.
We just need to be respectful of all peoples.
We were talking before about bisexuality and the stigmas with that and stuff. Are you familiar with the Katie Hill story that's in the news right now?
Which one is that?
She's the one that...
I don't attach names.
Yeah, I know. I it's been on my mind. But she's from Orange County. She flipped the district from red to blue. She's the... Damn it, I'm going to fuck it up now. Senator or the House?
Oh, yes, I do. I don't know her name, though.
And the husband released pornographic pictures. They were involved in a throuple. And she's resigned already. So they're saying it's such a different standard for what...
It really is, because we have a president who's been married and divorced how many times, and who said, oh, let's just grab him by the pussy, who's been accused of rape of a child.
Yeah. And I think 28 credible accusations are out right now, 28 different females.
Yep, and we have, who's that, Epstein, who didn't commit suicide.
Did not kill himself.
Who's locked up and has the books for how many other rich pedophiles out there? Yeah, it's a totally different standard for women. And I mean, especially if you put race into that and add race into that mix, but it's a totally different standard for women. And it's more than just what comes out as far as like the sex part. Like, women are allowed to be sexy. We can video ourselves if we want to. We can take those pictures. But does that give you the right to expose her if she sends them to you? No, that gives nobody the right.
So I read up on it a little bit, and I just like you pointed out, you don't know who's writing it, so I don't know how totally accurate it was. But what I read was her and her husband, she's bisexual, and her husband had started a relationship with a third woman, so it was a throuple, so it was a regular thing that was happening, and then she hired the woman. So it wasn't that they were saying, well, she went after one of her staffer or one of her campaign staff, whatever, but she hired her after the fact. So it wasn't like there was someone, and they were talking about this huge age difference. It was like 9 years. She was like 34 and the woman was 26 or something, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not a big age difference. So then she got elected, she won, and she kind of left them both behind. And the woman that had been in the throuple, she was particularly wrote about being really sad about it, really upset about it, and hurt that she left. And then started, supposedly, allegedly, another affair with someone within her house staff, and that they had passed rules against during the Me Too time. But that she's denying, and that when the husband heard that rumor or thought that was what was going on, that's why he released the pictures. So it was this real,
revenge porn is not cool.
No. Yeah. So it was, so it was all consensual. It was, it wasn't an affair. It wasn't something that was being done behind his back. But when he got upset, and whether, I don't know about that. Like I said, the second one, she's saying no, that didn't happen. So I don't know. And that's what they're saying could be a bigger deal because the House had passed rules. Yeah. Because of all that. But just really eye opening.
If she resigned because of the photos being released, that really is just a testament to where we are with women being allowed to express and to engage in their sexuality as equally as these men are. That is really a testament to where we are with that. If she resigned because she was guilty of something and didn't want to get caught up, now that's her problem. Now, he still shouldn't have released them pictures, yes. But that's her problem. Shouldn't have.
Yeah. It's a really eye-opening story in light of everything else that's been going on. It's really stark.
I mean, women have always been badgered throughout politics. I mean, hell, Hillary got flack for wearing a suit. Why?
Yeah.
And then, Michelle Obama gets flack for just being as fine as she is.
Shoulders.
Shoulders. And now we have a porn star, or no, Playboy. What Trump or Ivanka? What is
Melania,
she, Playboy?
Melania. I don't know, but there's definitely naked pictures of her.
Nudes.
Girl-on-girl naked pictures that were posed for.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a magazine or.
And she out here in these streets, and people are like, "Oh,
she
it's
came
okay."
on the Einstein visa.
Yeah. And she's like, "Oh, it's okay." She's such a classy first lady. And Michelle wasn't.
I know. Yeah, Michelle. I got to hear her speak after her book. Her book ended. I felt like she broke up with me, and I just want her to tell me another story.
Well, she has to. I think it's being released this month. The secondary edition to her book.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
So it's gonna be a self-guided reflective journal, and it's a couple hundred pages or something, and it asks you a prompt for every day that coincides with portions of her book. So my whole staff actually wants to purchase it. So as soon as it's available, we're gonna buy some for my whole staff, and then we're just gonna, use it and guide through it. Another form of self-care that we all kind of like to
an
do.
Assignment. I don't know. I want more of her.
I mean, she got her doctorate. Maybe she'll start teaching somewhere.
I know. I'd hoped she would run for something like president. 2016, she could have killed it. But after reading the book, I realized that's just never, ever.
Oh yeah, no. I don't think she's ever
not
gonna
her
do it. And I mean, rightfully so. She is using her position and her knowledge and her passion in places where it's most needed.
Yeah.
The run was Barack's thing. Now he might have been forced by Oprah. I don't know, but because she really is the first one that came out really supporting him. So maybe she just feels like, and I get it. Your husband has this 8-year grueling job. It's not the most grueling job in the world, but
what is if you do it right?
Yeah.
Not when you spend all your fucking time golfing.
Yeah. And you're in the public spotlight, and you can literally see, Barack is still fine as hell too, but you can see it aged him having that position and that role. And I can definitely see her just wanting to go out and be able to hug on her man and not have the news go, impeach him or something like that, or question, his citizenship, or judge the way they're raising their kids or something.
So ugly. It just, Yeah, looking back at all that, it's just unbelievable. And then what's being allowed now, God, it's mind blowing. But you did mention you're a sociologist, social worker. Both. Okay. You're a professor. You have 2 masters?
One master's and 2 bachelors.
And 2 bachelors. So, with all that experience, and you've been doing social work here in the Bay Area, what are top 3, if you could make any laws or make any policy that would make a huge impact on society, what would your top 3 be? Oh,
first one is rent control. Lord. Rent control. Automatically put that into place. Lord help me. Does that retro, we're in such a pickle right now. It's so awful right now. Could we fix it at this point, or? It would stabilize the rent prices, to fix the Bay Area's issues. They have an issue of being able to build affordable housing properties to make it actually relatively lucrative. Right now there are properties being built, and there are properties in developments in the pipeline, but they're all luxury properties. How many of us are remaining that needs a luxury property? Ain't nobody. We don't need luxury. We need affordability. Right. There are people that work at Facebook and LinkedIn, career choices that were at one point supposed to be lucrative, like going into IT or engineering or something, and they can barely make it. They can't make it out here. They have 2, 3, 4, 5 roommates, and they all get on the same BART and go right on up to the Salesforce or LinkedIn or wherever they're working. That's like the gig economy kind of stuff, right? Yeah. Where they're not really given full jobs even, or any kind of dependability. Yeah, if they can't afford it, how do you expect the people who are teaching yellow nappy-head kids every day for 8 hours? Being your firefighters. And being firefighters and police officers, social workers. Those necessities to have stability in society. How do you expect them to continue to move forward? My team, I already know a lot of them are still living with family, or making things work with a roommate. Or if they were long-time Bay Area people, then they might own a house from decades ago.
Or that they inherited.
That they inherited. But otherwise, they can't make ends meet. You know, I have people who are touching upwards of, and my last team, actually, you've met her. She's 65. You know, she turned 65 December 26th. I love you, you know. And she has her house and everything, and she's like, you know, this stuff's just getting out of control. And what am I gonna do? What is she gonna do? She can't even retire right now. And, you know, I have other person on my current team who is touching retirement age too, and she's like, I can't afford to retire. You know, even if you have $1 million in money in retirement, how long is that really going to get you in the Bay when the standard rent for a 1-bedroom right now is about $2,000, or $2,000 a month, plus utilities that aren't really all that cheap. So, I mean, addressing the issue means figuring out how to build affordable housing more quickly than we build luxury housing, putting caps on these rent prices, and then making sure that we're making housing available to those who most need it. You know, and that would be our individuals who are permanently disabled, and then our growing elderly population. You know, they're the ones that aren't going to be able to work long term and things like that. So yeah, I would definitely try to, in policy number 1, address this housing crisis. And that's my passion. It's why I've been in it for 10 years. So, you know, that, because it's absurd. You know, and I think 700,000 people left the Bay Area last year.
Yes, and only 500,000 came in.
Yep. You know.
So we're losing people. I mean, I feel like I'm concerned if everything's just gotta break before we can fix it. Like, at some point, things aren't. I mean, people aren't going to drive 3 hours to teach kids here.
Yeah.
They're not going to drive 3 hours to report to be a nurse at a hospital. I mean, there's just so many really crucial jobs we have that are not paying anywhere near enough. Ambulance drivers, EMTs, like, you know, like I feel like at some point
something's got to give.
Something's got to break. I worry if we can fix it. But 2 more policies. What else would you change from your perspective?
So I covered housing and homelessness. I would definitely I would probably restructure and fund the education system. That, because I don't understand how we consider ourselves a world superpower and our children can't articulate a thought. You know, and that comes from just experience now being in academia, trying to help bridge seniors in high school into college, and knowing that they can't write, they can't read, and they can't articulate a thought, and they're in college preparatory schools, you know, and they're still not able to do these things, and that comprehension piece. So I think we are on average still spending more per student than most other countries in the world. Like, we spend more money per student to educate them. Yeah. And at one point it was like twice as much as like Japan.
Wow.
I haven't kept up on that stuff, but we know that countries like China and Japan produce the most intelligent students at a lesser dollar amount. So we need to restructure our education system to really teach students how to formulate a thought and how to articulate that thought, and really start to focus more on innovation rather than repetition. You know, it blew my mind when I found out that the GPA system is apparently no longer a thing. Like, it doesn't matter what GPA kids get in some schools now. They just pass them because they don't want to fail the students. You know,
I'd say everyone's at a 4.5 now. Like, because of like the drive and the competition, and so there's like ways that they're like everyone's maxed out. Like, they're saying we had a rash of suicides up in Palo Alto like 3 years ago, I think. And they were saying a lot of it's pressure and the way that things have, like, you can't do more. So these kids are doing like 13, 14 hours of studies and stuff, and everyone's at a 4.5. Like, you got to move the bar or do something because, and there's no way to stand out, and there, you know.
And that's Palo Alto. That's a relatively wealthy place. But what about the Oaklands and, the Comptons and parts of San Francisco and stuff whose youth aren't getting that type of attention and getting that type of school and knowledge base,
How much more money goes into school officers instead of schools. Like there was one school they had they spent all this money on like metal detectors and staff to be police officers on campus or security guards.
Then they did actual educational
on textbooks
expenses.
And stuff.
Yeah, and schools education needs to be as dynamic as these emerging fields and fields of study and emerging career paths are, because not everybody's going to be an academic in a traditional sense of academia,
right?
And not everybody's going to be a scientist. There are people who can have viable career in the arts, especially art therapy, now that it's really coming to the forefront and emerging. Like, let them do that. Put money into these more liberal arts and the arts so that kids are well-grounded and they have some way to release that energy that you have them pent up in, because you are forcing them to learn repetitive thinking rather than more creative and informed thinking, and to let them make their own decisions and come to their own conclusions and articulate those thoughts. Like, our education system is trash for the most part.
You probably could know way more, but one article I read, and tell me if this jives with everything that you know, said that the school systems haven't changed in over 100 years, and that high school initially was meant to weed out kids that shouldn't, so they could figure out what else they should do, like go work on the farm or go do something else, and that nothing has really changed from that perspective of like weeding out people versus embracing everyone, teaching everyone. It's really more of a how to get rid of people. We haven't really changed that in any significant way.
I would say that, especially when that statement I definitely agree with, because it does weed people out. And if you already know that school's kind of not your thing, they should be allowed to go into a trade or do whatever it is that they want to do. But there's other associations that immediately come to mind where school is probably not the best option for some people. Like, have you heard of the school to prison pipeline? Yeah. And that is a very real thing. If kids get into a fight in certain cities, in certain states, they automatically get a felony or get sent to jail.
Yeah, what used to be suspension is now a police record.
Like, what? That is ridiculous. People fight. Whatever. Now, they shouldn't be releasing their aggression in that way, but give them a more constructive way to do that. I just think our whole education system is completely flawed.
That's what they said since Columbine. They've added something like 10,000 officers, or 10,000 schools now have officers, and they have yet to stop a single shooting. But the one thing that's really gone up, especially for students of color, is that they're being put into the judicial system when it used to be something that was handled within the education system.
Exactly.
And that's been the outcome of it. Not that they're stopping school shootings, not that that's. I mean, we can't say what their presence deters, but they have not been able to actively get involved in one and stop it.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing for high school, so my elementary school was relatively like repetitive, learn this stuff and then graduate. In high school, I had a very different high school experience than a lot of other people that I know of. We had our traditional classes, but then we got to choose languages and arts, physical fitness and things like that, and really get involved in that. We also had seminar days where they brought in outside teachers or outside professionals to just continue to engage students in the way that would really open up their minds. So I took like hula classes and Tahitian dance classes and West African dance classes that taught us the art form of West African dance, but also the history of West Africa. And then I also took like a metal bending class, and I would learn how to
metal bending.
Yeah, like take metal, heat it, bend it, and start building things. Like, I don't know what the terminology is anymore.
But like art, not functional. This wasn't like to do.
Oh no, we would build functional stuff.
Oh really?
Yeah, and
I never heard that term before.
They actually gave us like a blowtorch. I don't know why they gave us a blowtorch, but they gave us a blowtorch.
And nobody died, right?
Nobody died. Nobody died. And there were others who put their time into poetry and choir and singing. I learned how to play the guitar, the piano, and how to actually sing and read music all in high school. Just over the course of the 4 years. But not everybody gets that experience because there's no longer funding for the arts, in these schools, especially inner city schools. And then college, in high school, that's where I learned to formulate my thoughts as well, because I also did academic decathlon and stuff like that. And we were forced to, read for comprehension, articulate, to write speeches and things like that. But when I got to college, it was really kind of a setting where I felt like I learned best. because I actually had teachers who would ask me, what are you interested in learning? It's the same way that I teach now too. What are you interested in learning? What matters to you? What subject will really get you engaged in learning from the perspective that I am trying to teach you in? So, we have a sociological framework, and I always ask my students, what is it that you care about? And I can take that thing that you care about most and frame it sociologically for you. And that's how they started learning a lot of those concepts. And then they became so engaged. And I never had a dull class. I never had a quiet class because they were always going back and forth. And, ultimately, a lot of them were like, oh, I want to, look at sociology more when I go to school or go to college. And that was my bridge class from high school to college. So a lot of them went off to do, their first sociology course their freshman year. And it was that teacher, that professor, that really made me think that this is really how our education system should be for students who have that way of learning. And then if a student learns best from doing, give them somebody who can help them do. Because not everybody's going to just sit there and look at a doggone PowerPoint and retain whatever you said.
Right.
People are repetitive. They like to have the motions. And ultimately, instead of writing it down and doing it, it helps you memorize it better. Let them do that. But we don't do that right now. We don't tailor our education system for the way and the multiple different ways that people learn. And that's a problem.
Well, we are sitting in a sci-fi fan bar. Are there any things you're a fan of?
Oh, outside of Star Wars?
Are you Star Wars?
I've never seen Star Trek. I've never seen Star Trek, but I know a couple Star Trek trivia questions. But Star Wars, definitely the jam. And then, everything else is pretty much like anime-based.
Anime?
That I really like. Huge fan of Yu-Gi-Oh! I watch that thing religiously. I'm currently in season 2 of it again, rewatching it for 1,000 times.
Is this one that was from when you were growing up, probably?
Yeah, when I was growing up. I still watch anime.
I could be her mother. Almost my son's age. That's why I know that from.
I still watch anime, and just plop down and just watch a couple episodes or something, and just keep on going. But sci-fi is more Andrew's thing.
Or just any fan. I've just said anything you're building
more Andrew's
fandoms.
Yeah.
Some, video games. Still, you mentioned video games.
Oh, Lord.
No.
Now that I really started adulting, I feel like there's 21, 22, and 23-year-olds who think they're adulting. When 24, 25 hits,
shit gets real.
That's when I have to go, okay, I don't think I have as much time to play video games anymore. But I played Call of Duty and extensively. When Fortnite came out, I gave it a try and was kind of like, I could live with it, I could live without it. Heroes of the Storm was a fun one for me. Let's see, I'll still play the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card games and catch up on that. But as far as any extensive play of video games, I don't own a single game system anymore. When I started playing and I tried to just kind of play just to release energy and stuff, it ended up being a 7-hour affair. And then I would never sleep. And then I would have to turn around and go to work and be like, sorry, I was up playing video games all night. So I just kind of stopped. And now I'm just kind of more of I'm going to go down to the tap room right below my apartment, have a beer.
I've seen you post about that. That sounds
shit.
So cool. There's a new bar that's opened up in Oakland. It's a comic book based bar. I forget the name of it, but Paul really wants us to come visit it.
I haven't been there yet.
So we're making our way to Oakland at some point.
When you go, let me know, because I also have to take you to my normal watering hole. And they, like you guys, are
the one
always...
that's downstairs?
Yeah, the one that's downstairs.
I don't know if that would be amazing or the worst.
It's literally downstairs. I leave my apartment and I walk 2 floors down
That's awesome.
and go into the door. But they, like you guys, are always very, very involved in their bar. They're there every day. They're the only 2 that works there. And if they need other help because they're putting on any event, they'll get friends. But they're always there. And they only serve beer ciders and stuff like that. But it's a really fun environment, community seating, things like that. So when I went up to Oakland, I was like, okay, I choose my bars based upon the people, especially if the owners are actually in the bar themselves. And then that's just how I build my relationships, and I build my relationships authentically in that way. It's like I'm looking for the same. It's convenient, but then it's convenient that they're also like a couple of great guys too.
That's right.
So, but yeah, it's pretty dope. We could probably walk to 15 bars and within 10 minutes.
Oh gosh.
Bars and
I'm
tap
a lightweight.
rooms.
I
know
can't
you wouldn't pass number 3. We'd have to have you do one sip of everything.
I'm a sprinter, not a marathon runner. I got 2, maybe 3 hours in me.
Yeah, good lord, I'm in Jack London Square, and it's just it's impossible to get to all of them. I still haven't gotten all of them yet.
That's very cool. Well, we're definitely gonna make it up there. I think the new bar isn't open on Monday, which Sunday would be like the best day for us.
Oh yeah.
So we got to figure out a time that we can.
A lot of the tap rooms are open on Sundays. It might be open.
No, we looked. This is a specific
they're not
one.
doing it?
At least not now. Maybe because they're new, or I don't know. But this one specific, I forget what it's called, but it's comic book based. That's all I know. It's like all.
That's weird.
But I'll have to look it up. But maybe they've changed since then, so we'll look again. My final question is, I want you to tell me something that I don't know. So something from your walk in life or your perspective that I wouldn't have already know about or experienced myself.
Ooh. No, that you wouldn't know. In general? See, I don't know. I feel like we've had a lot of time. It's hard to answer that question. I was thinking about it earlier. I don't know.
I know, that's why I send everything ahead of time, because that's one.
Yeah, I couldn't even think about it
The
then
first
either.
time someone thought I meant like their deepest secret. I'm like, whoa,
No.
whoa, no. I don't mean like something I don't know, like a secret.
Like a secret? No.
But like, I don't know what it's like as a social worker the first time you had a difficult customer, or I don't know what it's like.
Oh, it's probably the same as what you deal with in the bar industry. Just irate people. You handle it the same way. I know, for the most part. Well, if we're gonna go with social work,
or anything. I mean, it could be any. I was just trying to give an example, but like something I don't know what it's like to walk into a bar as a black woman. Is there something about that you think was unique to being a black woman versus a white woman?
It depends on which bar I'm walking into.
Well, yeah.
Actually, I will tell you this. Okay, this is something you don't know that I'll tell you. So, my favorite thing, or one of my absolute favorite things to do, is to walk into a bar that I know that is white in a very rural, small town, because it sets them off, and they go...
Does it get very quiet?
Yeah, and it's the best. It's the funniest thing for me. Like, I like that open and like in your face kind of racism. It's those ones that do it on the slide, and I'm like, I don't know about you. But if I know where you stand, great. Thank you for letting me know. But walking into those, and I've done it across the country, just with as much as I've traveled, and the looks of, well, that doesn't happen often. That's unique. And I sit down and I ask for a beer or something, and the conversations that come from that, for me, are really enlightening about like where people's minds are and how they've come to have the thoughts that they have. And then a lot of times I leave there thinking that maybe I gave them a new world view and a new world perspective.
Like what? Like what's the conversation look like? What's some things that have been said?
I remember I was in Wichita, Kansas. Walked into some dive bar like right off the expressway, and the first thing the guy said to me, and I don't know like what his intention was, but he said, "We don't get too many of your kind in here." And I was like, "Well, good, you should buy me a beer on you." And he just was like, "You got balls, I like it," and bought me a drink. And,
So that was the bartender, or another?
No, that
customer?
was another customer.
Just another customer.
And he bought me the drink, and then I and the bartender just we really started having a conversation about our likes and things like that. And then the very first thing I tend to bring up that people can identify with, that usually are white, the music piece, because they don't expect me to like such hard and heavy rock that I do, all the way through the power metal, international and stuff like that. They don't expect it. So it's already a talking point there, and it's a little bit of, see, we aren't so different. And then, I'll post the question of, you probably haven't talked to too many black people, have you? You know, and they're like, you know, they'll say, well, there's not a lot in the area or something like that. Or they'll give me, you know, a story or something that happened back in, you know, their younger years or the way they were raised. And then they get to asking me a lot of questions about, like, what it means to be black, or why do we do this, or confirming or denying a stereotype or something like that. And it ends up being a really engaging conversation. Like, you know, I was trained to learn how to build engaging conversations. That's all social workers do. So, you know, it ends up being very engaging, very eye-opening for me, and then hopefully, I always feel like it was eye-opening for them, and I walk out of there feeling okay, and they're like, come back anytime, you know, kind of thing. Especially if I'm staying there a couple days, I'll go there, like, time and time again, and just get, you know, in that one bar. And, you know, I have pictures up in some hole-in-the-wall bars, you know, just me and the you know, kind of thing. There's probably only one up there, but it's really fun for me.
Do you ever feel, is it ever a negative experience? Are you ever upset at the fact that those stares happen and stuff? Or do you look at it as like a challenge, or because of your career and everything that you just feel like it's an opportunity for a conversation?
I always feel like it's an opportunity for a conversation, but it never really phases me. Like, I notice it because...
So you don't get angry, you don't feel scared? Nothing like that.
I've been black 27 years.
What does that mean?
I'm dealt with it all. Like, you know, it's hard to not be black and not deal with, you know, racism and prejudice and the stares and the assumptions and things like that, especially when you go to a predominantly white high school, a predominantly white college, and then University of Michigan. Which is a different beast in itself. The University of Michigan is full of a bunch of pretentious people.
Very white.
Very, very wealthy. Very, a lot of entitlement. Not everybody's like that. But when you go from that environment, like from the environment you were in, and having support of, well, not support, but being around people who look like you, at least, the very least, whether they hated you or not, at least there was some comfort in that, to being placed in situations where people probably haven't had a real conversation with a person who looks like you. You get to have all the range of emotions and, you know, people's stupidity thrown at you and things like that, and you get used to it. You know how to handle it. You learn how to handle it. And then when I trained to be a social worker, of course, you know, we learn to check our own biases. We learn how to handle those tough conversations, and we just kind of roll with it.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for being here with us today. I always like to do ending cheers with our empty glasses. I know, we should go get
Isn't that bad luck?
Cheers.
I like a sip.
I saved a little bit.